Which one's info? Which one's the service business?
Left is info, right's
Right.
service.
I don't even need to say anything else. You already know.
Yeah.
Right. And so the difficulty with the quote information education world is that it's one of the easiest businesses to make some money on. It is one of the hardest to make a tremendous amount of money on.
What do you think that like ballpark numbers, just so everyone knows, like when you say like some amount of money, are we talking like?
I mean, let's look at like there's a handful of $30 million a year businesses, in the quote information space. There's tons in the 1 to 3. Tons and tons and tons. Because that's about like if you just reverse engineer price points, it's so I like to reverse things to like to the human capacity because that's a constant. And so some of you guys are familiar with Dunbar's number. Between 120 and 150 is the amount of people that someone can like kind of manage in their heads, right? And so businesses will typically cap with no systems, which are the vast majority of businesses don't actually have systems. They say they have systems, but they don't. Caps around 150 people to manage. And so most of those businesses, if you reverse engineer price point for any kind of information plus services, gets you somewhere in the neighborhood of $3 million, maybe $5 million a year, and then they kind of cap around there. Now, the difficulty is that if someone is good enough, okay, here's my analogy. So let's say that I have the best tasting milk in the world. All right, that sounds weird. I have the best. Let's say I have the best coffee. Thank you. I have the best tasting coffee in the world. Okay. Actually, coffee is a bad analogy for this one. So let's go back to milk. So I have the best tasting milk in the world. Okay. If I give you two options, option one is I can take this full glass of milk, which is what you're used to paying for, and I say, I'm going to pour shot glasses of the best milk in the world, and you can have a shot of that milk. Or I can take this milk and pour it into the same size glasses, same number, but I'm going to fill the rest up with water. Which would you rather have? The full amount, but more diluted milk, or a shot glass of the right kind? Which one would you rather have? Shot glass. That in and of itself is why the quote coaching business does not scale. So the idea that somebody will, if what you do is so special and so valuable that you can teach someone how to do it in a weekend and be a coach for you, how valuable is it? Now, it might be valuable, but the likelihood that you can actually teach someone to be good in a weekend is low. And so the only quote coaching models that I have seen scale are one of two permutations. Permutation one is you take people from the audience that have been you for a very long time and you give them away where they're getting a significant rev share. I'm not talking 10%, I'm talking they make half or more of the revenue, where it makes more sense for them to continue working with you because you generate deal flow for them to grow their own business underneath of your umbrella. That's option one. Option two is you run a large event style business. You look at Tony Robbins, you look at, whatever, like there's a handful, and there's not many. And that's the Tony Robbins version of that, in my opinion, is best milk in the world, shot glass. You're getting, you have smaller volume of that access or that interaction, but it's so good, you're still willing to pay for it. Now, how well does Tony Robbins coaching do it? And I love Tony. I'm a big, he's an awesome guy. But I think most people, I would bet, I don't know the stats on this, I would bet that the NPS scores and the customer satisfaction scores of people going to an event with Tony for 5 days is higher than people spending 5 days with his coaching staff. That would be my bet. And so that's because you got a full dose of diluted milk, or would you rather have the shot of the best stuff? And so most of those businesses do cap because so the cap ends up being, you can still scale it, but the milk has to be so fucking good that you actually have to be able to be diluted, the volume of what they get is still good at a tiny, tiny amount of access. Most people aren't that good. And so instead, they cap at 1 to 3 million-ish. Sometimes they sell something that's super expensive because of the space they're in. They're selling something related to, the real estate tends to have higher things. Anything investment related tends to have higher LTVs, things like that. And then those people can get to maybe 10, 20-ish. But then again, it becomes difficult. ROAS continues to drop. Margins continue to compress as you try to go to colder and colder audiences. And then you end up in one of these machines where you're like, I have to keep selling people in order to pay my bills. And then all of a sudden you have a $20 million a year nonprofit and you hate your life.
So stick with services. So
It just depends on what you want. If you're like, I want to make a few $1,000,000 a year, you absolutely like it is one of the fastest ways of making a few $1,000,000 a year.
but if in contextualizing to myself, like I feel like I've kind of jumped a lot of that hurdle. Like if I'm already doing like this run rate,
I think you're
it's
doing
like
great, man. Yeah.
just pay it out.
Stick with what you're doing. I'll spell this out though. Like I want to be clear. I don't think there's a problem with it, like at all. I'm just saying that it depends on what we're solving for. If you're like, I want to build a $1 billion company, it's probably not going to be in information. It's probably not. If you wanted to have, and like you probably won't even have an exit because it's so key man driven. But some people don't want to. Like a friend of mine, PC, he was at the launch. He I think it was 11 years or 12 years. He lived on $70,000 a year for him and his wife, and then he sold for $250 million. Some people don't want to live on $70,000 a year for all of their 20s and their 30s, and then make 250. Some people would prefer to make a few $1,000,000 a year for their 20s and their 30s, and not have the exit. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It's just when people try to have both where it becomes a problem. And so people are just unwilling to make trades. And I just see that as just a human problem, not like a, this versus that problem. Like I want everything. Okay, cool. So does everyone. But like it doesn't tend to work that way. I want to have a super profitable business that grows really fast and also has tons of enterprise value. Pick two.